Hello everybody. Mini split systems like this one are becoming increasingly popular, especially here in Phoenix, Arizona. And this year has been no exception as we start the summer with extremely high temperatures. I want to show you the installation process so that if this is something you want to attempt, you will know what things to expect. Very first thing to do is to find the ideal location for the outside unit. It should be on the same side or very close to where the interior unit will be placed, but you should also consider the distance from your electrical panel as you will need to run a dedicated line to the exterior unit. Also, make sure the location you choose is not a place where a lot of trash or debris will collect or a place that can be affected by flooding. I also recommend that you check your electrical panel to make sure that you have available space to add new breakers into the system. This electrical panel is actually already full. If you take a look at the first breaker, you can see that it has two smaller breakers in the same space. These are tandem and sometimes called duplex breakers, and we will install another one of these so that we can free up some space. Now that we know where the outside unit will go, we need to open a path to it. You can use a stud finder to help you find the wooden studs that will need to be drilled through in order to get the cable from the electrical panel to the exterior unit. We opened up a small hole right next to the panel as we need to get our cable in there, and we also opened up another hole right at the edge of this wall so that we can guide the cable through. Don't be too concerned about the holes as the drywall can always be patched up, but always be cautious of where exactly you are opening these holes in. We also need to drill a hole on the outside wall in order to feed our cable through. If you are drilling into block, I recommend you drill into the mortar between the blocks as it's easier to patch up if you make a mistake. On the adjacent wall, we are now drilling through the vertical studs so that the cable can be routed to the electrical panel. Be careful when routing your cable through to not make any tears in the protective sleeve. You shouldn't need to use a lot of force to get the cable routed through, and having a second person help you feed the cable will make this much easier. So you're probably wondering, how do I wire the cables to the circuit breakers? Well, I would be more than happy to guide you if I was physically there so that I could make sure that you do not make a mistake that could harm you. All the videos that I have made have been to motivate you to try it yourself. However, working on your electrical panel is something that I encourage you to hire a professional electrician. You can follow along the rest of this video and then hire someone with the proper knowledge to help you make the final connections necessary. I myself always reach out to my friends in the trade when something is beyond my capabilities. For example, you will see my friends from Monsters AC come and help me vacuum the line set. They have the proper tools to get the job done, and I'm able to provide work for them. So please, stay safe and enjoy the rest of this video. Back on the outside unit, it's time to install the disconnect box. Disconnect boxes come in different sizes, but a simple box without fuses works perfectly for this application. Before I show you how I wired the disconnect box, I need to correct a mistake shown here. While MC cable is allowed to be exposed on walls, it is not allowed in damp or wet locations. We disconnected the MC cable, removed the metal sleeve, and ran the wires inside a liquid-tight conduit to the disconnect box. The disconnect box gets mounted to the wall using two concrete anchors with the cement block wall. Then you simply follow the instructions that come with your specific disconnect box, and you can see on mine I have things labeled where each cable will go. The remaining wiring points are for the cable that will run to the outside unit, which will look something like this. The disconnect box we purchased came with a red wire instead of white. For this installation of a 120 volt unit, we need to wrap the red wire with white electrical tape to properly label it as a neutral conductor. The location we chose to place the exterior unit seems to attract a lot of water, so we will need to mount this unit above the ground to avoid potential issues in the future. To do this, we have welded a metal rack using angled steel. This is then anchored to the block walls using masonry screws. On top of this, we added a 3/4 inch plywood. And finally, everything is covered with a sheet of galvanized steel, which we have folded and shaped to fit perfectly over the metal rack and plywood. Inside of the room, we start working on getting the indoor unit mounted on the wall. Once the mounting plate is on the wall, it will help us determine the exact location where we need to drill so that all the pipes and electrical cable can cross through the wall. We drill past the drywall board first and then start drilling through the cement blocks. Once the hole has been made, it's time to prepare the indoor unit to be mounted onto the wall and connect the line set and electrical cable. When wiring the indoor unit, pay very close attention to the manufacturer's instructions where you need to attach each cable. Everything should be properly labeled, and all the units I have worked on have a wiring diagram that can also help you determine where each cable goes. Here I have my cables already attached the way the wiring diagram shows. The leads are held in place by this clamp on the unit, and the rest of the cable goes through a hole to the back. We have fed some of the line set through the wall to attach it to the indoor unit. You will want to have someone hold the unit while the line set is attached together. To connect the line set, consult your manual to check for torque specifications. Applying the correct amount of torque to each nut will be the difference between a completely sealed system or a line set with a leak on these connections. If you do not have a torque wrench, I recommend you tighten the nuts with sufficient force, but be careful to not overdo it as you may damage the flare copper fittings. With the line set attached to the unit, it's time to cut off any excess insulation and wrap the pipes together, and carefully start to feed the line set, condensation drain, and the electrical cable through the hole, and then finish mounting the interior unit to the mounting plate by simply snapping it into place. You may need to move the unit up and down as you position it, but it should be very sturdy once it does snap into the brackets of the mounting plate. You will then secure the unit with 2 screws on these 2 cutouts. Outside, we start working on the line set by carefully bending it and shaping it to where it will attach to the exterior unit. Be careful about bending the line set. You want to do wide turns and not sharp and drastic corners, as this can kink and damage the pipes. Back inside the room, I start working on all those holes we made. A simple trick to covering the holes is to use the same piece of drywall you cut out. In order to do this, you need to attach plywood to support the piece of drywall to keep it from falling inside the wall. You can use screws to attach the drywall pieces, but my preferred method is to just use caulking to stick the pieces onto the plywood. I also recommend that you score the drywall about 1 inch all around the hole you are trying to patch, and to remove the first layer of paint and drywall. This is to create a shallow indent for the drywall mesh tape. This way, when you cover it up with mud, you can sand it down more before getting into the mesh. Back outside, we are preparing the line set to be attached to the exterior unit by joining the pipes and electrical cable together with the included wrapping tape. If you are purchasing your own mini split system from a vendor that sells to the public or to those intending to do their own install, you are very likely to receive an exterior unit with the proper amount of refrigerant for the length of the line set. If such is the case, you will need to wrap and leave the remaining line set next to the unit. Now, just like the indoor unit, you need to check your manual to figure out where you will be attaching the electrical wires to. Each terminal should be labeled to help you determine where the cables will go. You can see here on my unit that terminals 1, 2, and 3 are wired just the same as the indoor unit. The remaining terminals, L is used for the hot or live electrical cable, N for the neutral cable, and finally ground for the grounding cable. We then start connecting the line set to the outdoor unit. Be sure to use 2 different wrenches to counter the force and tighten down the nuts with sufficient force. Now that everything has been installed, we are going to finish up the patches inside by sanding and painting them. Depending on your drywall, you may need to add a layer of texture in order to blend in the patch. On this wall, the drywall was smooth and the only texture was the one made by the roller when it was painted. To match this, I will dab my brush to create very subtle ridges. Before the refrigerant is released into the line set, we will be testing the entire system by applying a vacuum to the line set and wait a few minutes to see if the vacuum pressure will hold in place. If the pressure does not drop, it means that the system is completely sealed. If the pressure applied by the vacuum starts to decrease, then we will know there is a leak somewhere. One of the reasons I always ask for help during this part of the installation is because my friends at Monsters AC have all the equipment necessary to vacuum and pressure check these systems. Consult your manual to check exactly how much pressure the vacuum should be pulling and maintaining. Unfortunately, the pressure in our system would not hold, so we began spraying each fitting with a soapy water mixture to help us identify the location of the leak. The soap and water mixture will react with bubbles whenever it's sprayed over an area that has a leak, and this can help you find the leaks in your system. The leak happened to be where the line set connects to the indoor unit's hoses. We made a small tear in the insulation and tightened the nuts connecting both hoses. Once that was done, we applied a vacuum to the system one more time and the pressure stayed stable, which meant it was time to release the refrigerant. Once that was done, it's now time to turn on the indoor unit and set the system to cool. The indoor unit is the brains of the entire system, and it will turn on the outdoor unit and begin cooling down the room. I don't need the temperature gun to check if it's working, but rather it's a visual aid so that you can see just how cold the air is. I let the unit run for a few minutes to make sure everything is working as it should, and I was very pleased to see that it was producing very cold air. This concludes the installation for this mini split system. If this video has been helpful to you or just entertaining to watch, I ask that you please subscribe to my channel and that you click on the like button.